a ton of mysteries all throughout Naruto. Questions that we've had from day one of Naruto that still haven't been answered. What is Hashirama's Sage Mode? What was Itachi's illness? Who's Lord Jashin? And while we can theorize and theorize and theorize all day long, wondering about the true answer to any of these questions, in actuality, we'll most likely never get an answer to any of these questions. Unless I ever get my hands on Masashi Kishimoto. I don't think he speaks English. But by far and away, out of all of these questions, one of the most bewitching and angering is, who is Lord Jashin? You see, because while Naruto has a cast of incredibly unique and differently powered characters, with people like Kisame being part shark and having gills with next to no explanation, there's nobody whose powers raise more question marks throughout Naruto than Hidan. See, there's plenty of immortal characters in Naruto. Sasori became basically immortal by turning his body into that of a puppet. Kakuzu became basically immortal by stealing a forbidden jutsu from the hidden waterfall on his way out. And by accessing this forbidden jutsu, he learned Earth Grudge Fear, which allowed him to steal the organs of others and live for almost a century. However, while we have explanations for characters like Sasori and Kakuzu, we have no explanation for Hidan. Well, I mean, we do, kind of. Hidan tells us that by worshipping Lord Jashin, a god that we hadn't heard of prior to Hidan's existence, that Hidan, by eventually making enough sacrifices to Lord Jashin, was eventually able to garner enough favor with Lord Jashin that Lord Jashin granted him immortality. And not sort of kind of immortality like Sasori and Kakuzu have, where sure, if you cut their head off, they can reattach it, but if you destroy their vital organs, they will die. Hidan has the full gambit immortality, like it doesn't matter what you do to me, I will survive level immortality. The kind of immortality where Shikamaru can tie hundreds of paper bombs to his chest, explode them to smithereens, and he can still talk smack. Hidan, in a world filled with plenty of pseudo-immortals, is the cream of the crop. And yet the way that this cream of the crop immortality is achieved, is explained, is just by killing a couple people and giving their bodies to a god we've never heard of. Therefore, while we do have an explanation for how Hidan was able to achieve immortality, most people don't accept that explanation. Because if Lord Jashin is able to hand out immortality to any of his most ardent followers, why isn't there more Jashinists? In fact, why isn't there a single other Jashinist? Well, that's not entirely true. There is one other Jashinist, and his name is Ryuki, and he was introduced in a Boruto-era light novel, The Steam Ninja Scrolls. However, Ryuki was following Hidan's path, and even while following Hidan's path and sacrificing a ton of women to Lord Jashin, Ryuki never gains immortality, meaning that there's only ever been one person that we've ever met in the entire history of Naruto that has ever achieved Lord Jashin's favor, and that was Hidan. But one would assume if there's a surefire, very well-known way to become immortal and all you have to do is kill a bunch of innocents, that more evil people would try that. And yet, only one. Not to mention, in a separate light novel, Konoha Hidan, Konoha went out looking for other Jashinists, because they, like you and I, were concerned that other people would pick up on this whole Jashinism thing. However, the combined forces of Konoha's investigative research team couldn't pick up any traces of Jashinism anywhere. So not only is there not other Jashinists, but there's no other Jashinism anywhere. So even in-universe characters seem confused as to why nobody else would try this out.
I haven't a clue what's going on here, but I'll act like I do.
Which leads us to a lot of very logical questions. Who is Lord Jashin? How does he grant immortality? How does he choose who gets immortality? Does he exist at all? And there are a lot of theories that answer this question. In fact, one of the first ever videos I made on this page is about theories answering this question. However, I recently received an email that brought up a very interesting point that I've never thought of. And it's that Jashinism and the Uchiha have a ton in common, like more than can be ignored. There's a seriously non-zero chance that Lord Jashin was an Uchiha. We're gonna be exploring that theory. But before we get to exploring anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you like the idea of me exploring anime theories from some of your favorite shows, you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime. Or if you just love the idea of me talking about anime, you're gonna love my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or if you just want to look like you like watching anime, go ahead and head over to my brand new merch store, otakusanonymous.net, where we have some of the greatest anime t-shirts, crew necks, and sticker packs known to man. Lord Jashin. Like I said, tons of different theories about who or what he could be. During the advent of this page, I released a 7-minute video with poor lighting where I didn't know where to look, talking about this exact topic. And in that video, I explored 2 possible theories. See, some people believe that Hidan was born with invulnerability, a mutation he was born with that allowed him to recover from any bodily harm. And here's the thing, that's not even that crazy in the Naruto universe. People are born with healing factors all the time in the Naruto universe. And while some people's healing factors are substantially better than others, looking at you, Hashirama, many people in the Naruto universe are able to heal from injuries that would otherwise kill regular people. And while not everybody is born with these abilities, others have to find ways to activate them or get something sealed inside of them that gives them those abilities. Those are both also possibilities for Hidan. Because here's the thing, while Hidan is able to recover from being stabbed in the midsection, decapitated, blown up, while we've never seen the extent of Hashirama's healing factor, it's not crazy for us to assume that he could do the majority of those things. Madara compared the mitotic regeneration of Tsunade to Hashirama's healing factor, however said it paled in comparison to Hashirama's genius. And considering the fact that we've seen Sakura in her light novel not only have an arm blown off and just regenerate a new one, but also get the ace treatment and get a flaming hot chakra tail through her stomach and just proceed to run down the chakra tail and knock the dude who impaled her out, the possibility that mitotic regeneration pales in comparison to what Hashirama could do means that there was next to nothing that could kill Hashirama. So the possibility that Hidan was born with a healing factor that made him borderline immortal isn't all that crazy. However, Hidan wasn't born as mentally sound as Hashirama, and therefore Hidan, upon realizing he was immortal and invulnerable, began to have to rationalize that fact. See, what would you do if hypothetically one day you were stabbed in the chest, and at that moment that was the most bodily harm you had ever incurred, but when the assailant pulls the knife out of your chest, instead of you dying, the wound just closes. Very few of you would come to the realization, oh, I'm immortal. Many people would begin to have to rationalize how they were able to close that wound. Was it a weird genetic mishap? Was I blessed by God? And this is kind of the rationalization circle that Hidan had to go through. He had to find a way to rationalize to himself that he was in fact immortal, and therefore he created the concept of Lord Jashin, a god who bestowed immortality upon him and apparently no one else. Which explains why Ryuki, who was inspired by Hidan, was never able to achieve Lord Jashin's blessing. And therefore kind of Hidan is Lord Jashin. He's the creator of the idea of Lord Jashin, and he himself is the one who bestowed immortality upon himself. Other people believe that Hidan got his immortality from the god of the Otsutsuki, and this is before we even knew the god of the Otsutsuki existed, which we now know the god of the Otsutsuki is Shibai. Because the only way that made sense for people to rationalize the idea of somebody being fully immortal is that they got that ability from somebody stronger than we've even met thus far. Because even amongst the Otsutsukis that we know, and we know a bunch of them, not only are they not immortal, but they also don't have much of a healing factor. Well, they all have insane durabilities that allows them to spar with the strongest people in Naruto's universe. Kaguya died from 6 past Chibaku Tensei. Momoshiki died from a Rasengan. Ishiki died when his time ran out. None of them have a healing factor even on par with that of Hidan, and therefore people believe that Lord Jashin is actually the god of the Otsutsuki, Shibai, in that Hidan, by offering praise and sacrifices to Shibai, was able to be granted immortality by Shibai. Now, this second theory definitely holds less water than the first one, because everything that we know about the Otsutsuki and Shibai doesn't really align with the ideals of Lord Jashin. Sure, you could say that Shibai wants less humans or less aliens on other planets because that way it'd be easier for them to take out the entire planet and turn it into a chakra fruit, but honestly, that seems like really small potatoes to an Otsutsuki, especially an Otsutsuki god who's consumed hundreds, if not thousands of planets. Why would Shibai, an entity of supposedly almost infinite power, care about one human killing a couple hundred other humans? Why would Shibai meddle in the day-to-day affairs of Hidan? Especially when you consider the fact that by the time that Hidan came around, that Shibai had shed his physical body on Earth and went to go live in some other pocket dimension by himself. There's really no reason for Shibai to have anything to do with Hidan. Others believe that Lord Jashin is the Shikigami that's summoned when you use Reaper Death Seal, and others believe that that Shikigami is actually an Otsutsuki. Shin being the Shikigami makes a good amount of sense. Gods with powers that allow them to control death. Both are loosely explained concepts, and we know for a fact that Shikigami exists in the Naruto universe. It's just maybe nobody else outside of Hidan ever thought to pray to it. And considering the fact that the Shikigami is in fact a god of death, if anybody would be able to convey the ability to rule over death itself, it should be the god of death. And therefore, if you wanted to get immortality from one person, this Shikigami is probably a pretty good choice. However, some people have taken modern day information that we've received in Boruto and gone gone all the way back to Hidan and applied that modern day information to try and get an answer to this question. See, Hidan's powers operate in a way that's somewhat similar to things that we're currently seeing in Boruto. See, when Hidan walks around, he's just a regular guy in a big old jacket. However, when Hidan acquires the blood of somebody he's trying to kill, he tastes it. And upon tasting somebody's blood and drawing his Jashinist ritualistic circle, his body undergoes a transformation. His skin becomes black and his body is covered with numerous white markings reminiscent of the bones that they're covering. He has white markings on his face that resemble a skull, white markings on his ribs that resemble ribs, white markings that run across his fingers and his arms that represent his arm bones and his fingers. For all intents and purposes, he's kinda supposed to look like a skeleton. However, activating a transformation to access the majority of his most powerful moves is interesting because it ties into the plot of Boruto pretty well. See, as we all know, karma markings are the hottest thing in the streets right now in Boruto. Now, karma markings, when not activated, exist as diamonds on the user's palms, and that's the case for Code, Kawaki, and Boruto. However, upon the activation of the karma seal, tattoo-like symbols extend all the way up the arm that the karma seal is on and go onto the neck and face. And these symbols can be different colors. In the case of Kawaki, these symbols are orange. In the case of Boruto, they're blue. And in the case of Code, they're white. And Code's karma markings are white because he received a white karma marking, which means he was given the abilities of Ishiki, but wasn't given the ability to be a vessel for his reincarnation. Now, some people believe because of the white markings that spread across Hidan's body that he received a white karma marking from a high-ranking Otsutsuki, which when you consider the fact when we look at Kara's hideout, there is 2 Otsutsuki symbols that have been destroyed, which we now believe to have belonged to Shibai and Shibai's lower rank. It's a possibility that either Shibai, or more likely than not Shibai's lower rank, gave Hidan a white karma marking that gave Hidan access to his blood sharing ability and his immortality. Now, considering the fact that Jigen was able to live for over 2,000 years implies that Ishiki making him his karma vessel made Jigen basically immortal. And it stands to reason that Shibai's lower rank would be stronger than Ishiki. So it's a possibility that Hidan was operating as a white karma mark wielder of Shibai's lower rank. Now, personally, none of those are the theories that I subscribe to. I believe the answer, how Hidan found his god, lies in Hidan's backstory. And truly, once you begin to understand the psychology and history of Hidan, you can begin to understand where he might have found this god. See, because Hidan grew up in the village of Hot Water, which is a small village on the outskirts of Konoha that used to have a ninja village. However, in Hidan's lifetime, they realized that they wanted to be a hot springs resort and not a ninja village. However, before they underwent this change, Hidan went to go find a lost clan that used to exist in the village of Hot Water, and that would be the Shinoiki clan. Now, this is a clan that used to exist within the land of Hot Water, and they wield the Ketsuregan, a dojutsu that gave them massive genjutsu prowess and the ability to control any liquid with high amounts of iron in it. However, they were cast down into a place known as the Valley of Hell by the Uchiha clan, because it was believed that one of the members of their clan killed the lightning daimyo. And Hidan wanted to find this clan, and more importantly, the Valley of Hell. So one day as a child, he set out to find them. And find them he did. However, he found them after every single one of them killed each other. See, the Shinoiki clan was split between people who wanted to go get revenge against the Uchiha and people who wanted to live peaceful lives. And much like the Otsutsukis on the moon, these two warring clans eventually came to blows, until eventually there was only 2 members of the clan left. And this is the scene that Hidan stumbled upon. However, Hidan stumbled upon this scene only a couple of days after it happened. He ran back to the village hidden in the hot water and reported the news. However, as Hidan was already kind of a weird child, everybody assumed that he killed the entire clan, which is crazy. In fact, they got so curious about whether or not Hidan killed the entire clan that they sent what few shinobi they had to the Valley of Hell, for the shinobi to come to the conclusion that the clan killed themselves off. However, people in the land of hot water were still wary of Hidan and his possible involvement in the slaughter of an entire clan. And just like that, from a young age, Hidan was a first-hand witness to brother killing brother, neighbor killing neighbor. And more than that, he was ostracized from his own village for the possibility of being involved in that massacre. And this was an incredibly formative experience in Hidan's childhood. Because of this, Hidan saw firsthand the violence of the world and the fact that neighbor can very willingly kill neighbor, which didn't pair well with the fact that he was growing up in a village that slowly but surely was demilitarizing. And considering the fact that he wanted to be a shinobi, being in a village that was getting rid of shinobis wasn't super great for him. So one day, in a fit of anger at the fact that his village was slowly but surely becoming docile, he left the village and killed his neighbors on the way out, long before he even found the teachings of Lord Jashin. Which makes me believe that Hidan was born immortal, and the formative, traumatizing experiences he went through as a child made him create the image of Lord Jashin in his mind, all to rationalize the immortality he was born with. However, the reason that we're making today's video isn't any of those theories. No, the reason we're making making today's video is because even though I thought this topic had been beaten to death, I was emailed an interesting new look on the possibility of Lord Jashin's identity. But before we get into that theory, I have to explain a couple of things about Jashinism so I can draw the parallels between Jashinism and the Uchiha. You see, Jashinism at its core tenets is about killing those closest to you. And not physically closest to you, emotionally closest to you. This is referred to as killing your neighbors, but not your physical neighbors, your emotional neighbors. This is why Hidan never tried to kill Kakuzu, because he hated Kakuzu even though they were always with each other. So genuinely, the best way to not be killed by Hidan is for him to hate you. And in Jashinism, the closer you are to somebody that you kill, the more favor you're granting to Lord Jashin by killing and sacrificing them. So if you kill your mother or your father or your best friend, you're giving more favor to your lord. And the more favor you grant to the lord, the higher chance you're granted immortality. Which means, in essence, the more people you kill that are closer to you, the more power you achieve. And the Uchiha operate in a system very similar to this. See, the Uchiha also believe that in order to gain more strength, you have to kill those closest to you. See, for an Uchiha to be able to achieve their Mangekyo Sharingan, they have to kill their own best friend. Is at least what they believe for the majority of their existence. But at the very least, every Uchiha outside of Sarada has had to be at least slightly involved in the death of their best friend. And therefore, by killing the person closest to you, because it has to be your best friend, you're able to achieve more power. But it doesn't end there, because while an MS is great, an EMS is better. And in order to achieve an EMS, which is considered by many Uchiha to be the pinnacle of power that they can achieve, you have to merge eyes with an MS wielder from your own family, which means you either have to wait for somebody from your family with an MS to die, or kill them and take theirs. Which means, once again, to achieve more power, you gotta kill somebody close to you. Which means, in its core tenets, the Uchiha and Jashinism are very close to each other. To take it one step further beyond this, though, let's look at the symbol that Hidan draws at his feet every single time he wants to do his Jashinist ritual. The symbol is very simple. It's a circle with a triangle in it. And this is a symbol that's existed in humanity for thousands of years. Well, originally it was used to symbolize mind, body, and spirit. It's now used by Alcoholics Anonymous to symbolize your path to recovery. The symbol has existed for a long time. However, I don't believe this symbol is supposed to be homage to AA. See, the concept of a circle with a triangle in it is not necessarily new to Naruto, especially if that circle with the triangle in it is red. See, because the much closer thing symbolically to this circle and triangle than the AA symbol in Naruto is the MS. See, obviously a Mangekyo Sharingan is a circle, they're eyeballs, but I actually want to focus on the triangle here. See, almost every single MS in existence outside of Shisui and Sasuke's has 3 points. Fugaku, Madara, Izuna, Itachi, and Obito all have 3-pointed MSs, with once again the only outliers being Sasuke's 6 points and Shisui's 4 points. Now that's weird. And when you take the symbolic and ideologic similarities between the Uchiha and Jashinism, you could see where connections begin to get made. But who cares about symbolic or ideological similarities? How would this work? How would Lord Jashin be an Uchiha? How does this all tie back into the Uchiha? That's a good question. You're starting to think like a hammerhead. Well, I believe that there's 2 possible answers to that question. See, if we look at Hidan's transformation, he turns the entirety of his skin black and then manifests white markings. Now, when it comes to karma markings, nobody out there manifests a completely different skin tone. A bunch of symbols creep up their arms, they go to their neck and their face, and that's it. Maybe, just maybe, a couple of them will grow a horn every once in a while. However, that's not the case nowadays. See, ever since Boruto had his chest caved in by Kawaki and Momoshiki had to step in to save his life, Boruto has a permanent karma marking-like fixture on his chest. A black triangle that permanently exists where Momoshiki healed the hole in his chest. Now, this black triangle is a representation of the remaining 18% of conversion that Momoshiki had to get rid of in order to save Boruto's life. But since Momoshiki diverted that 18% into Boruto, he's now 100% Otsutsuki. But the problem here is that that black triangle exists even when Boruto's karma marking is not activated. So it's a permanent fixture. So how is Hidan able to transform between his regular stasis and his black version when Boruto just has a permanent fixture? Well, the answer might lie in the color of the markings. Because remember the original theory that we were talking about, how there's a possibility that Hidan gained a white karma marking. And therefore it's a possibility while manifesting this white karma marking that Hidan gives the entirety of his body to the person who gave him his karma seal. But obviously, since it is a white karma seal, he can't be a vessel for an Otsutsuki. Just in that moment, he Otsutsufies his body, similar to how Momoshiki Otsutsufied part of Boruto, and it now permanently exists as black. And this actually kind of makes sense. Because while Hidan has immortality always, in order for Hidan to use his blood-sharing technique that allows him to stab himself and destroy somebody else's organ, he needs to undergo this transformation. Much in the same capacity that Boruto, Code, and Kawaki all have to undergo their karma transformations to use a majority of their strongest techniques. And thus his transformation for Hidan is him undergoing his karma transformation so he can use his strongest abilities. But genuinely, what are those abilities? Well, there is a way to tie the abilities of Hidan back to the Sharingan. See, there's a possibility that the Otsutsuki that Hidan got his white karma marking from had a Sharingan, and when Hidan enters his transformation, he's able to access these Sharingan abilities. However, in order to access these Sharingan abilities, Hidan has to draw a symbol that's representative of the Sharingan of the Otsutsuki who gave him the white karma marking. But what are these abilities? Well, the Uchiha also have a form of immortality, and that form of immortality comes from Izanagi, tapping into the power of creation of all things. It's a possibility that by drawing this symbol and undergoing his karmic transformation, that Hidan is able to access a form of Izanagi that not only allows him to regenerate any part of his body, but also cast a yin-yang genjutsu that's able to implement whatever damage he does to his own body to somebody else's. And this would explain why the symbol of Jashinism is so similar to that of an MS. However, there's also a second separate answer to this question that also has to do with Izanagi. See, we all know that Izanagi requires the sacrifice of a Sharingan, and because the Sharingan is so important to Uchiha members, it's a forbidden jutsu, as the idea of sacrificing the thing most important to all of them is strictly forbidden. However, if there's one thing more important than a Sharingan, I'd say it's human life. But what if hypothetically Hidan has access to a somewhat permanent Izanagi, and he's able to access this somewhat permanent Izanagi by not sacrificing Sharingan, but sacrificing people. And therefore, instead of sacrificing a Sharingan, Hidan sacrifices within a figurative one, which would explain why his ritual only works within the capacity of his circle, and therefore also why it's important to sacrifice those who are close to you emotionally, as there's a possibility that sacrificing these souls through the power of this ritualistic symbol of the Sharingan actually extends his Izanagi. Either are possibilities, but I still like my theory more. But when I got an email pointing out the similarities between Jashinism and the Uchiha, I figured I'd give it a fair shot. But what do you guys think? Do you like this theory? Do you believe that there's a possibility that Jashinism is tied to the Uchiha? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Time to take this one to the dog park.